There comes a moment in every story when all seems lost, when the light fades, when prayers feel unanswered, and when silence becomes the only voice you hear. You stand in the middle of your life, surrounded by fragments of what once felt certain, and wonder if God has forgotten how to write your story. The chapters have been long, the pain unending, and the waiting unbearable. You look at others who seem to be living their dreams, while you're stuck in the shadows, replaying scenes that make no sense. But what if this silence isn't neglect? What if it's divine preparation for a plot twist that only the author himself could imagine? Every great story requires tension. Without conflict, there can be no breakthrough. Without loss, there can be no restoration. And without the feeling of being forsaken, there can be no revelation of true divine presence. God's greatest works often begin with confusion. His most powerful miracles rise from the ruins of disappointment. You see, the author of your story has a pattern. He writes backward from victory. What looks like chaos to you is order in his hands. What feels like delay to you is perfect timing to him. Maybe you've been praying for a change, begging for the ending to make sense. But the story isn't over yet. The ink hasn't dried. The page you're standing on is not the final one. The same God who wrote resurrection after crucifixion, who penned freedom after captivity, who brought light from darkness, is still writing, and when he writes, he does not simply rewrite brokenness, he transforms it. He turns betrayal into destiny, rejection into redirection, and silence into symphonies of purpose. The truth is, God allows certain endings to happen not because he's cruel, but because he's crafting a story that will make your enemies watch in awe. There are seasons where he hides you, not to punish you, but to preserve you. He removes people, opportunities, and comforts, not to strip you of value, but to make room for something divine. While you think the story has ended, he's quietly building a chapter that will leave everyone speechless. Imagine this: the same people who walked away, the ones who doubted you, the ones who whispered about your failures, they will witness the next chapter unfold. And when they do, they'll have no explanation except this: God did it. Because that's what he does. He writes plot twists no one can predict. He specializes in unexpected turns that reveal his glory. The darkest parts of your life are not wasted ink. They are the setup for something magnificent. Think about how every masterpiece begins. The painter uses shadow before light. The composer introduces tension before harmony. And the storyteller brings despair before deliverance. God, the ultimate creator, does the same. You may feel like your life is stuck in the middle of a storm, but to him, it's the perfect atmosphere for a miracle. Perhaps. He's allowing the plot to thicken, not to scare you, but to ensure that when the revelation comes, it will carry weight. Because if everything were predictable, if every chapter were easy, then no one would pause in awe when the story shifts. But when God flips the script, when the one who was overlooked becomes the one elevated, when the rejected soul becomes the cornerstone, when the broken heart becomes a vessel of divine strength, the world takes notice. You are not forgotten. You are in a divine draft. The author is not finished with your manuscript. He's editing out what would have ruined you, rewriting what you thought was wasted, and highlighting what will define you. The pause you're living in is not permanent, it's preparation. The next chapter will not just surprise you, it will silence the voices that spoke against you. Have you noticed that in the most beautiful stories, the audience gasps when the twist appears? That's exactly what God is doing with your life. He's been setting the stage, orchestrating the timing, and preparing hearts so that when he moves, there will be no doubt that it was him. You won't have to prove your worth or defend your faith. The evidence will be undeniable. The same people who thought your story was over will see it become a testimony. So, don't lose faith in the silence. Don't curse the waiting. The same pen that wrote pain will write restoration. The same hand that allowed loss will bring gain. The same voice that seemed quiet will soon thunder with promise fulfilled. You may not understand the chapter you're in, but soon you'll look back and realize every tear, every delay, every detour was necessary. Because when God writes a plot twist, He doesn't just change your circumstances. He changes you. He deepens your faith, strengthens your character, and expands your capacity for grace. And when the moment comes, when the page finally turns and the twist unfolds, you'll stand there in awe, speechless, knowing that no human hand could have written such a story. So hold on, the author hasn't stopped writing. The chapter you've been waiting for is being crafted even now, and when it comes, the world will know. Your story was never over. It was simply waiting for the moment when God would write a plot twist that leaves everyone, including you, speechless. There are moments in life when the heavens seem sealed, when every prayer feels like it vanishes before reaching the sky, and the silence becomes unbearable. You whisper your pain into the night and wait for an echo, but none returns. The days pass without sign or reassurance. It's in those moments that faith feels like a fragile thread, stretched thin between your longing and God's stillness. You start to wonder, did He hear me? Has He turned away? Or am I simply forgotten? But what if this silence is not abandonment? What if it's divine preparation, a sacred pause before something extraordinary? When God is quiet, He isn't absent. He's active in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Silence in His language is never empty. It is the sound of construction behind the curtain, the hush before revelation. Just as a great author stops before writing the next line, not because the story is over, but because he's perfecting the next chapter, God pauses in your life to prepare the pages that will astonish you. We, as impatient beings, mistake stillness for inactivity. We think that if we can't see movement, there must be none. But that's not how divine authorship works. The greatest transformations take place beneath the surface, in secret, unseen by human eyes. The roots of a tree grow in silence long before the branches stretch toward the light. The seed buried in darkness makes no noise as it breaks open to birth new life. So it is with you. When your world feels silent, you're not being ignored, you're being planted. The soil feels suffocating because destiny always begins underground. God's silence is a signal, not of neglect, but of divine intimacy. He is working on details you are not yet mature enough to understand. There are prayers He will not answer yet because your heart is still being shaped to hold the weight of the blessing. He knows that giving you the promise before you're ready would crush you, so He waits. He waits until your roots are deep enough, your faith strong enough, your character refined enough, and though the silence feels unbearable, it is mercy disguised as mystery. Every saint who ever walked with God knew this silence. Joseph felt it in the darkness of the pit, Moses in the wilderness, David in his years of exile, and even the prophets in their solitude. Yet when the silence broke, it broke with divine purpose. What once felt like delay revealed itself as perfect timing. God's silence was the prelude to His suddenness, the stillness before the storm of blessing, the breath before the breakthrough. But here's the truth many overlook. Silence tests what your words cannot. When God doesn't speak, it exposes whether your faith is dependent on His voice or grounded in His character. Do you trust Him only when He explains Himself? Or can you believe that he's still working even when he doesn't? Real faith is not built in the noise of answered prayers. It's forged in the stillness of uncertainty. It's when you keep walking, though there's no signpost. Keep believing, though there's no confirmation, and keep praying, though the heavens seem brass. That is when your faith matures into unshakable trust. If you listen closely, silence has its own rhythm. It is not void, it's pregnant with purpose. God often speaks through what he withholds. Sometimes his refusal to speak is itself a message. A call to rest, to trust, to surrender the need to control. Because the one who truly believes doesn't demand constant reassurance. They wait, knowing that the author never abandons his story mid-sentence. You see, silence is not the absence of a plan, it's the concealment of one. Just because you can't hear him doesn't mean he's not moving pieces in your favor. Think of it, the stars move silently, the earth spins wordlessly, and yet everything remains in perfect order. So too is your life. God's silence does not mean he has stopped working. It means he's aligning the unseen forces that will make your story make sense. And one day, suddenly the silence will break. The chapter that once felt meaningless will reveal its purpose. You'll look back and realize that every unanswered prayer, every quiet night, every tear you thought was wasted, all of it was setting the stage for divine fulfillment. God was not denying you. He was designing something far better than you asked for. So don't mistake his stillness for distance. The author has not closed your book. He's just turning the page quietly. Your name is still written on his heart. The silence is not the end. It's the setup. The story is still being written, and when this chapter ends, you will see why he had to pause. The twist he's preparing requires silence, because only in silence can destiny be formed without distraction. Chapter 14. How extraordinary. Hold your peace even when heaven seems quiet. Trust that what looks like stillness is sacred strategy. Because when God finally speaks, when the silence breaks, when he turns the page, the world will stand still in awe. What once felt like the end will reveal itself as the beginning of something beyond your imagination. There comes a time in every divine journey when God begins to prune your path, not to punish you, but to protect what he's preparing. You start losing people, opportunities and comforts you thought you couldn't live without. Friendships fade. Doors that once opened easily begin to close. Conversations feel different. The familiar becomes foreign. It's confusing at first because it feels like loss. But in truth, it's a line. God is removing what can't go where you're going. Most of us cling to what feels stable, but faith often requires separation from stability. The very things you're trying to hold on to might be the ones blocking your elevation. When God decides to write a new chapter in your life, he won't allow old characters to carry old energy into it. Some people were only meant for your previous season, not your destiny. And though it hurts, he loves you too much to let you drag dead weight into the promise. Sometimes God will close the door you're pounding on because he sees what's on the other side. He hears conversations you didn't hear, sees motives you didn't see, and protects you from betrayals you couldn't predict. You think you're being rejected, but you're actually being redirected. His no is a form of mercy. His silence is a shield. His distance is discipline that preserves your purpose. Look at the patterns of divine separation throughout history. Before Abraham could become the father of nations, he had to leave his homeland. Before Joseph could step into the palace, he had to be thrown into the pit. Before David could wear the crown, he had to walk away from comfort and face wilderness seasons. Separation always precedes elevation. It's God's way of clearing the path so your spirit, can travel light. There are relationships that were never meant to endure your growth. The more you evolve spiritually, the less certain connections can survive. God allows this friction not because He wants you lonely, but because He's detoxing your environment. You can't reach destiny surrounded by voices that speak doubt, fear, or envy. Sometimes He will silence those voices Himself. He will make them lose interest in you. He will let misunderstandings rise so that distance becomes inevitable. And though you'll weep at first, you'll thank Him later for every goodbye that guarded your growth. Think of it this way. A rocket cannot enter orbit without detaching its boosters. The parts that help it launch are not designed to help it sustain. They fall away as it ascends. You too will lose attachments as you rise. Not because they were evil, but because they were essential only for your beginning, not your becoming. When you try to hold on to what God has already released, you chain yourself to places He's already left. Every divine removal carries purpose. The loss that broke your heart was actually divine editing. The betrayal that wounded you was God's way of cutting ties that could have strangled your calling. He saw the jealousy that hid behind smiles, the deception behind friendship, the manipulation behind love. He knew that if those people stayed, they would take credit for blessings meant to reveal His glory alone. So He intervened quietly, not to destroy your world, but to rebuild it on truth. The painful truth is this: some people can only love you as long as you stay small. The moment you start growing, you outgrow their comfort. So God disrupts the connection. He lets confusion arise, not because you did anything wrong, but because elevation demands solitude. You can't carry everyone into the next chapter. Not everyone deserves front row access to your transformation. Great compassion. This is why obedience during pruning seasons is critical. You can't ask God to open new doors while clinging to the old ones He's already closed. Letting go is an act of faith, a declaration that you trust His authorship more than your own attachments. You must learn to bless those who leave, release those who disappoint you, and forgive those who betrayed you. They were part of your making, but not part of your becoming. And here's the beauty. After every divine removal comes divine replacement. God never subtracts without the intention to multiply. What you lose in one season, you gain in another, but purified and multiplied. The new people He sends will not compete with your purpose. They will complement it. The new doors He opens will not confuse you. They will confirm you. So if it feels like your world is shrinking, understand this: God is not reducing you. He's refining you. He's stripping away what cannot survive the altitude of your calling. Every loss is a sign that something greater is near. Don't curse the pruning. It's proof that you're growing. Don't resist the change. It's evidence that your story is about to advance. You are being prepared for something so divine that not everyone can accompany you. God is protecting your promise by filtering your circle. And when you finally arrive where He's taking you, you'll see why the separation was sacred. You'll understand that what you thought was rejection was divine redirection. The hand of a wise author ensuring that only the right people appear in the most important chapter of your life. Hold your peace. The removals are not random. The detours are not mistakes. You are being positioned for a revelation that will leave even your enemies speechless. Because when God writes your next chapter, it will be clear why some people can't stay. They weren't meant to witness the glory that's about to unfold. Pain has a way of convincing us that it is permanent, that the ache we feel today will echo forever, that the wound we carry defines who we are. When you're in the middle of suffering, every moment feels endless. You wake up heavy, fall asleep numb, and wonder if you'll ever feel joy again. But pain is deceptive. It makes you believe it's the whole story when, in truth, it's only a single page in a much greater book that God is still writing. Every story worth reading has conflict. Every character that grows must first endure something that breaks them. Without the tension of trial, there can be no transformation. You see, the author of your life doesn't waste ink on meaningless suffering. Every tear, every disappointment, every betrayal is recorded, not to destroy you, but to develop you. Pain is his most honest teacher, and though its lessons are severe, they are sacred. When God allows pain, it is never without purpose. The discomfort you feel today is often preparation for the strength you will need tomorrow. Think about it. The gold that gleams brightly had to endure fire. The diamond that glows in light was once buried under pressure. And the flower that stands tall once broke through hard soil. You too are being refined, shaped, and strengthened through the furnace of adversity. The heat that surrounds you is not meant to consume you. It's meant to purify what's within you. Yet when you're living inside that chapter, it's hard to see beyond the pain. You read the same paragraph of heartbreak over and over, and it feels like the story has ended there, but the author is not done. What you're reading as tragedy, he's already written as transformation. He knows the next scene before you do. He knows how this sorrow will become wisdom, how this heartbreak will birth compassion, how this loss will create room for something divine. The enemy often whispers during painful seasons, "This is who you are now, broken, forgotten, defeated." But that's a lie. Pain may mark you, but it doesn't define you. You are not your suffering. You are the soul being shaped through it. When the page turns, and it always does, you'll see that the very things meant to destroy you became the foundation of your strength. Think about the great stories of faith. Joseph's pain of betrayal and imprisonment became the platform for his promotion. Job's suffering became the stage for double restoration. Ruth's loss became the door to destiny. Even in silence, even in sorrow, God was writing redemption into every line. And the same author is still writing yours. The pages stained with tears are the ones he uses to reveal his glory most beautifully. Sometimes God lets you sit in pain so that you stop trying to control the narrative. As long as you keep fighting to rewrite the story your way, you miss the masterpiece he's forming in secret. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that the author knows what he's doing, even when the script doesn't make sense. The story doesn't need your perfection, it needs your patience. You might not see it now, but one day you will. You'll read back through the painful pages and realize that they were never random. The rejection that broke you was protection. The heartbreak that crushed you was redirection. The silence that scared you was preservation. God was not ignoring you. He was editing your life into something extraordinary. Every cut, every pause, every unanswered prayer was the careful work of a loving hand shaping your destiny. Pain is not the end of your story, it's the evidence that something worth writing is happening. When a book reaches its darkest moment, it's usually right before the breakthrough, the turning point that changes everything. The same is true for your life. You are not stuck, you are being set up for transformation. The pain you're in is not proof of abandonment, it's proof of investment. God only prunes what he plans to multiply. And when the page finally turns, when the dawn breaks after the longest night, you will see how each sorrow carried seeds of purpose. You will find yourself saying, "I needed that pain. I wouldn't be who I am without it." Because some strength can only be born through struggle, and some wisdom can only be found in the dark. So don't curse the painful page. Don't close the book because of one bad chapter. The author hasn't finished yet. The ending is already written in grace, and the plot twist is on its way. You'll soon understand that the pain you thought would end you was actually the bridge to everything God promised you. What broke you was building you. What hurt you was healing you. And when the final chapters unfold, every tear will make sense. Your pain is a page, not the whole book. The story isn't over. The author is still writing, and what's coming next will leave you speechless. There is a sacred mystery in the way God works. He often allows humiliation before honor, rejection before revelation, and breaking before blessing. It seems cruel at first, unfair even, that the pure-hearted must walk through shame while the arrogant seem to rise without restraint. You look around and wonder, why must I be the one who is misunderstood, dishonored, or forgotten? But if you look closer, you will see that humiliation is not a curse in God's story. It is a tool of refinement, a silent forge where character is formed and destiny is prepared. Before every elevation, there is always a humbling. God cannot entrust greatness to a soul that has not been emptied of pride. He will allow situations that strip you of applause, recognition, and validation, so that when honor comes, you will know exactly who deserves the glory. The world calls it humiliation, but heaven calls it preparation. The stage of suffering is the ground where true crowns are molded. Think of Joseph. Betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused and thrown into a prison for crimes he never committed. To men he looked finished, forgotten and defeated, but to God Joseph was being hidden in the shadows where humility could purify his heart. When the time was right, God lifted him from the dungeon to the palace in a single day. And when Joseph stood before kings, he didn't boast of his wisdom or resilience. He said, "It is God who gives the interpretation." That's what humiliation does. It strips away the ego so that only divine dependence remains. Many of the painful moments that embarrassed you were not designed to destroy you. They were designed to detach you from the need to be understood. God sometimes lets your reputation fall so that His name can rise through your restoration. The people who mocked you will one day witness the miracle, and they'll know that your comeback wasn't crafted by human hands. The same mouths that laughed at you will whisper in awe when God reverses the narrative. The same mouths that laughed at you will whisper in awe when God reverses the narrative. You see, if honor came before humiliation, you would believe it was your strength that earned it. But when humiliation precedes honor, you know it was grace that lifted you. God hides greatness in low places. The seed must first be buried before it breaks into bloom. The cocoon must first look lifeless before the butterfly emerges. The cross must come before the crown. Every divine story carries this sacred pattern. Descent before ascent. When people humiliate you, when they gossip, betray, or shame your name, resist the urge to defend yourself. The moment you start explaining, you interrupt the author's unfolding plot. God doesn't need your defense. He needs your trust. Stay quiet. Stay faithful. Let the humiliation finish its work, for hidden within that pain is purification. Those who are humbled deeply are the ones God can elevate safely. Humiliation teaches what success cannot. It reveals the condition of your heart. It shows whether you're living for applause or for purpose. When you can endure mockery without bitterness, serve quietly without recognition, and forgive without revenge, you have passed a divine test. That's when heaven begins to whisper, "Now you're ready." The honor that follows will not be the kind that fades with human opinion. It will be the kind that silences critics and confounds skeptics. It will not just lift you, it will glorify the one who carried you through shame. The same people who pointed fingers will point to heaven, saying, "Surely God is with them." Remember, the path to glory always passes through humility. The throne is always on the other side of the cross. If you are being humiliated, misjudged, or mocked right now, do not despair. God is allowing it because He's about to reveal His power through your endurance. Every tear you've shed in secret is being collected. Every insult you've endured is being recorded. And when the moment of honor arrives, it will not just vindicate you, it will reveal God's justice. The day will come when those who humiliated you will see the divine reversal unfold before their eyes. They will remember the words they spoke and the way they treated you, and they will be silent. Because when God exalts the humble, He does it in such a way that no one can deny His hand. So wear your humiliation as a hidden crown. Let the shame refine you, not define you. Keep walking through the valley with grace, knowing that the mountaintop is already written in your story. The deeper the fall, the greater the rise. The quieter your season, the louder your vindication. For in the kingdom of heaven, humiliation is not a punishment. It is promotion in disguise. And when the author finally turns the page, your story will shift so suddenly, so divinely, that those who laughed at your fall will stand speechless at your rise. There is something sacred about God's timing. It never rushes and it never fails. Yet to the human heart, waiting feels like punishment. We pray, we plan, we expect, and when nothing happens, frustration begins to whisper, maybe God forgot, maybe He's not listening, maybe it's not going to happen. But if only you could see what heaven is orchestrating behind the delay, you'd thank God for every second of it. Delay is not denial, it is divine precision. God's hand moves with such detail that what appears as stagnation in your life is actually synchronization in heaven. He is aligning events, preparing hearts, and removing obstacles you didn't even know existed. The reason it's taking so long is because it must last so long. Real blessings are not rushed, they're refined. You are not waiting for something, you are being shaped for something. When a painter begins his masterpiece, the most time-consuming part isn't the final stroke, it's the preparation. The mixing of colors, the layering of textures, the positioning of light. Every brushstroke is intentional, and the delays are what make the image breathtaking. God paints your life in the same way. You only see blank canvas, but He's creating depth, shadow, and brilliance. If He finished it too soon, the masterpiece would lose its meaning. Look back at your life and remember the things you once begged God to give you, and how He didn't. Now you see why. If He had answered you in that moment, the gift would have become a burden. The relationship would have broken you. The opportunity would have distracted you, and the success would have destroyed you. What you saw as delay was divine protection. God withholds what you want now to prepare you for what you'll need later. God's delays always carry hidden purpose. He doesn't waste time. He uses it as a tool to refine your patience, your faith, and your perspective. When you wait, you learn to trust without proof. You learn to listen for His whispers instead of demanding His signs. You learn to stop trying to control the outcome and start surrendering to the author's flow. Delay transforms your prayers from God when to God I trust you, even now. Sometimes the delay is not about you at all. It's about the people connected to your promise. Maybe the hearts that need to receive your purpose aren't ready yet. Maybe the door you've been praying for is still being built. Maybe the place you're meant to walk into still needs cleansing before you arrive. God's delays are not just about your readiness. They're about divine alignment. He ensures every detail fits perfectly so that when he releases the blessing, no man can question it and no enemy can touch it. Consider the stories of faith. Abraham waited decades for a promise that seemed impossible. Joseph spent years in waiting rooms of injustice before stepping into royalty. David was anointed king as a boy but had to wait in caves and deserts before he could wear the crown. Even Christ himself waited 30 years before revealing his purpose. Delay is the language of destiny. The greater the promise, the longer the preparation. But here is what most miss. Waiting doesn't mean inactivity. While you wait, God is working, and so should you. Waiting in faith is not sitting idle. It's growing, learning, and preparing for what's coming. The time you spend in delay is sacred soil where God cultivates discipline, humility, and endurance. The fruit you bear later depends on how you handle this season now. If you can praise Him in the delay, you prove that your faith was never tied to the outcome, but to the one who controls it. So when you find yourself asking, "Why is it taking so long?" remember this: God is not late. He's layering perfection into your story. He's setting up the moment when everything will align so seamlessly that you'll realize why it had to happen this way, and not a second sooner. The right opportunity at the wrong time becomes a curse, but the right opportunity at God's time becomes destiny fulfilled. There will come a day when the waiting ends. The doors will open without effort. The prayers you whispered in tears will manifest without struggle, and when that day arrives, you will know. Every second of waiting was sacred. Every delay was detailed. Every no, every silence, every pause was God saying, "I'm not finished writing this part yet." Do not curse the delay, bless it. It's proof that God is not giving you fragments. He's giving you fullness. He's not answering halfway. He's preparing completely. When He delivers, it will come with peace, permanence, and perfection. Because what God builds slowly, no man can break quickly. So, rest. You are not forgotten. You are being perfected. The author of time has not missed your moment. He's crafting it. And when the page turns, you'll see that the delay was never a detour. It was destiny, unfolding exactly as it was meant to. There comes a moment when words are no longer needed, when explanations fall silent, and your life itself becomes the testimony. You will not have to prove to anyone that God was with you, that your pain had purpose, or that your faith was worth it. The blessing will speak. It will stand as a living witness to the unseen battles you fought in secret. The very story they mocked will become the miracle they marvel at. When God moves, He does so in a way that silences debate. The blessing He is preparing for you will not whisper. It will proclaim. It will not need defense. It will be undeniable. The same mouths that questioned your worth will confess, "Surely God has done this." You see, divine vindication doesn't come with noise or drama. It comes with peace. It comes quietly, gracefully. But when it arrives, it shifts everything. For a long time you've been misunderstood. People have judged you based on fragments, never realizing the whole picture God was painting. They saw your failures, but not your faith. They saw your breakdowns, but not your prayers. They saw your waiting, but not your war in the Spirit. They assumed you were forgotten, not realizing heaven was still writing your chapter. But when God's blessing manifests, it won't just answer your prayers, it will answer their doubt. Think of how God moves throughout history. When He blessed Joseph, the same brothers who sold him into slavery had to bow before Him. When He restored Job, the same friends who criticized him had to witness his double portion. When he exalted David, the same Saul who hunted him had to watch God's hand place a crown on his head. Divine blessings do not need explanations. They are explanations. This is why God tells you to stay silent in the face of accusation. Stop defending yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Stop explaining your process to those who have not earned access to your promise. When the time is right, your fruit will speak, and no one can argue with fruit. You won't have to justify the path, because the outcome will do it for you. There's something powerful about a quiet blessing. It doesn't arrive with noise or announcement. It simply appears, undeniable and radiant. You'll notice how those who once ignored you will start paying attention, how those who looked down on you will now look up in wonder. But you won't gloat. You'll smile in gratitude, because by then you'll understand that the real victory was not in being seen. It was in being refined. The waiting changed you, the suffering matured you, the silence purified your heart. And the blessing? It was never about proving anything to them. It was about proving everything to you. Because when God finally blesses you, you realize that what you endured was not wasted. You'll see that every tear watered the soil of that miracle. Every sleepless night carved space in your soul for gratitude. Every heartbreak created capacity for holiness. When the blessing comes, you'll understand why it took so long. It needed to fit the shape of who you've become. And the beauty of divine favor is that it doesn't require applause to validate it. The blessing itself becomes your voice. People will ask, "How did this happen?" And your only answer will be, "God." Not because you're being humble for the sake of modesty, but because you'll know. There was no strategy that could have done this, no plan that could have aligned it so perfectly. Only the divine could weave such redemption from ruin. The blessing will speak for itself through your peace. It will show in the way you no longer chase approval, no longer fight for closure, no longer beg for validation. You will walk in calmness, while others are still caught in comparison. Because the evidence of divine favor isn't noise, it's peace. That stillness, that unbothered glow that says, "I've seen too much of God's hand to doubt his timing." And soon, those who once whispered behind your back will speak differently. They'll say, "I didn't know God was preparing them for this." That's the beauty of God's justice. He doesn't just lift you, he lets others witness it. Not out of revenge, but revelation. He wants them to see what happens when a person refuses to give up, even when no one believed in them. He wants them to see the glory of faithfulness rewarded. So stop trying to make people understand your process. Stop explaining what God told you in secret. You owe no one an explanation for the path he chose for your growth. In due time, the blessing will announce itself. It will arrive so clearly that even those who doubted you will say, "Now I understand." The day is coming when you will wake up and realize the waiting is over, the season has shifted, and the promise has arrived. You won't feel the need to post it, prove it, or parade it. It will be evident. The peace in your heart, the smile that cannot be faked, the opportunities that align effortlessly, they will speak louder than any words ever could. And when that moment comes, you'll know the truth. God didn't just bless you to reward you, he blessed you to reveal himself through you. Your life will become the sermon. Your story will become the proof. And the blessing, quiet, radiant, and complete, will speak for itself. There is no wasted line in the story God writes. Every sentence, even the ones drenched in sorrow, has meaning. Every dark paragraph has purpose. When you stand in the middle of your pain, you only see fragments, the confusion, the heartbreak, the disappointment. and you wonder how any of this could possibly be used for good. But the author sees the whole book. He sees how every wound, every delay, every betrayal will come together in a divine pattern that reveals his glory. When he turns the page, nothing remains ordinary. He redeems every line. You see, God is not the kind of writer who edits out your mistakes. He doesn't tear out chapters or erase what's been done. Instead, he transforms them. The broken parts of your story are not deleted. They are rewritten with meaning. The pain that once brought shame will become the very testimony that brings healing to others. The mistakes you thought disqualified you will become evidence of God's mercy. The moments that embarrassed you will one day stand as proof of his redemption. That's the mystery of divine authorship. God wastes nothing. The heartbreak that hollowed you became the space where grace could fill. The loss that shattered your confidence became the soil for humility. The betrayal that left you alone became the silence where you finally learned to hear his voice. What the enemy used to destroy you, God will use to define you. The line that once read like tragedy will, in time, reveal triumph. When God turns the page, everything shifts. Suddenly, what once hurt begins to make sense. The tears you shed were watering the ground for your restoration. The people who left were creating space for divine replacements. The moments that broke you were shaping you into someone unbreakable. You may not see it while the ink is still wet, but when the next chapter unfolds, you'll look back and realize that even the darkest pages were necessary for the beauty of the ending. Life often feels like a book written out of order, like the pain came too soon, the joy too late, and the answers not at all. But God writes differently. His pen moves through eternity. He already knows the ending, while you're still questioning the beginning. And though it feels like you're walking through chapters of confusion, you're actually moving through divine construction. Each event, each encounter, each tear-stained night is being crafted into something magnificent. The reason God hasn't turned the page yet is because he's still perfecting the paragraph you're living in. Some lines require refinement, some sentences require silence. He won't rush your redemption story because true restoration takes precision. The author, who writes with eternity in mind, does not panic over temporary chaos. He knows how to weave tragedy into triumph, how to turn betrayal into breakthrough, how to make your scars shine brighter than your victories. And when he finally turns the page, the change will be so swift and divine that you'll barely recognize your life. The shame will fade into significance. The loss will reveal its lesson. The darkness will make sense in the light of his plan. What once caused you to cry in despair will one day cause you to cry in gratitude. You'll say, "Now I understand. Now I see why it had to happen this way." The truth is, redemption is not about erasing your past. It's about transforming it. God doesn't pretend the pain never existed. He redeems it so powerfully that it no longer defines you. He takes what was meant to humiliate you and uses it to elevate you. He takes the failures you tried to hide and turns them into testimonies that set others free. And when he's finished, the same pages that once broke your heart will be the ones you share with pride, because through them, others will see his goodness. So if you feel stuck in a painful chapter, don't close the book. Don't assume the story is over because this page hurts. God is not done yet. You are reading what he is still writing. The author is preparing to turn the page, and when he does, redemption will rush in like light breaking through darkness. You'll see how every scar, every silence, every heartbreak was a necessary line in the story that leads to glory. He is the only one who can take a shattered narrative and make it whole again. The pages you thought were ruined will become the ones that shine the brightest. Because when God turns the page, He doesn't simply continue the story, He completes it. And in His completion, every line finds meaning, every pain finds purpose, every loss finds restoration. So wait for it. Hold your faith steady as the ink dries on this chapter. The same God who began your story will not leave it unfinished. The page will turn, the light will break, the redemption will come, and when it does, every tear you've cried will make sense. Every broken piece will fit perfectly. Every moment of despair will transform into divine poetry, because the author never wastes a word, and your story, no matter how painful it has been, is still being written by hands that redeem every line. And so, beloved soul, here you stand, between what was and what will be, at the edge of a chapter that has not yet been revealed. You have walked through the silence, the pruning, the pain, the humiliation, and the waiting. You have questioned the pauses, endured the rejections, and watched doors close that you thought would open. Yet through it all, something inside you refused to die. A quiet, unshaken faith that whispered, God still writes. It was never about the struggle itself. It was about what the struggle was shaping. The author of your story was never absent. He was simply silent, preparing the perfect moment when everything would make sense. You thought the ink had run dry, but He was merely turning the page. Every unanswered prayer, every lonely night, every tear that fell in secret, none of it was wasted. They were the punctuation marks in a divine narrative too sacred to rush. When the plot twist arrives, it will not come with warning, it will come with wonder. The same hands that wrote your seasons of sorrow will pen your season of restoration. The same people who watched you fall will see you rise without explanation. You will not need to speak. The blessing will do that for you. The story itself will testify. The transformation will stand as proof that God was in control all along. And when that day comes, when heaven unveils what it's been preparing, you will look back on the tears you once cursed and call them holy. You will see that the breaking was not punishment. It was preparation, that the silence was not rejection, it was rehearsal, that the pain was not abandonment, it was birthing. And every moment that once made you question His plan will make you worship His wisdom. So lift your eyes, the author is not finished. The same God who began this story is about to write a twist so divine, so unexpected, that even those who doubted you will fall silent. Your life will become a living parable of redemption, a reminder that God never ends a story on defeat. He always ends with glory. You have not been forgotten. You have been hidden for revelation. The time of unveiling is near. The ink is still wet, the pen still moving, and heaven still writing. And when the page turns, when the story shifts, it will leave everyone, including you, speechless. Because no one writes stories like God does.